Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for that. We get through that, the introduction. And now as we move forward on the format, what we're going to do here this evening, ladies and gentlemen, is we're going to ask the same question of all candidates and let them move down the line and answer it. We'll probably, we'll start maybe on that end and then switch it back, and so each one's not going to, quote-unquote, going first or last. And the manner of the questions were chosen in such a way that we spoke to both people on all sides of the aisle, so to speak, because there are kind of three sides to that aisle, if you will, the left, the right, the center. And we tried to come up with questions that were pertinent and germane to not only the issues of today, but also the issues more so as they pertain particularly to Washington County. And I will say that as this commissioner, those who know, I'll state my party. I am a Republican, but as I look across here, I see Democrats, Republicans, and Independents that I've known as friends and I've worked with. So we've really tried to roll this ball right down the middle, so to speak. And the fact that we want to make sure that we give everybody an ample opportunity to let their views be known. And there are no gotchas here. These are questions that are meant to be open-ended and allow people to speak to what they feel is important. Now with that, the only other thing I would ask, just so we can kind of allow people to see the comparison, because let's be honest, it's a comparison here tonight. People, you may have a choice between one or others or two or three, whatever it may be. So I would ask Roy and Mr. Granger to please switch seats so you're sitting with seatmates. And where Bob, you, and Kevin are unopposed, not unopposed, but unopposed here this evening, I should say. We'll let you sit together. So, by no preference, we'll start on the end, just because it's been a while since we've heard. We'll move to the first question. On this, we're going to ask we're going to cut your time down a little bit because there's a lot to get through here. So we're going to ask you at 2 minutes. We're going to stand and we'll let you wrap up, so to speak. We're not going to cut you hard at 2 minutes, but at 2 minutes, Dave's going to stand and he's going to start that Academy Awards walk, as we know. Washington County, unfortunately, has been dubbed by some, including myself, even in the local paper, sadly, of being the murder capital of Maine over this past year. We've seen a record number of homicides that have taken place in our community. Many, but not all, but many associated with the blossoming drug trade that has been overtaking our county. So with that, the question to you in your position, and it's germane to all, is what your thoughts are on this and what you would do to help address these issues in Washington County.
Okay, I'm going to stay seated. Otherwise, just getting up and down, it's going to get tiring. First, one aspect of that is the matter of the rampant drug addiction, drug abuse in this region in Maine, including over in the other part of District 6. And part of what needs to be done, it gets tangled up with so many things, and I'm trying to narrow it down because of the time limit. We need to see the full range of mental health and substance abuse services, the full continuum of services, because otherwise people get lost in the cracks. Right now, it's the jails and prisons that are the largest and fastest growing service delivery system when it comes to substance abuse. And that's just not right. We need to catch this problem before people start beginning crimes and start killing each other. But that's not the whole story. It is required when we start talking serious crimes of violence. We need to have law enforcement adequately supported It's going to take more support, particularly in the rural areas. It's a long way from Danforth to Cherryfield. I've driven it. And the Sheriff's Department is responsible for nearly all of that territory. It's an impossible task for them. That's going to take more resources. It's going to take smarter deployment of resources. And that's not speaking against the sheriff one bit. He's handed an impossible task there. So, two ends. We've got to intercept the drug problem, and we have to have law enforcement capable of responding when, in reasonable time, when things go awry.
Thank you.
You bring up some really good points, Jonathan. That's going to be a little hard to follow. But absolutely, we all know that we do have a major drug problem here in Washington County. And what it is, we've got these dealers that are coming from out of state, and they're tempting our people, and that's what's causing a lot of this situation with the murders that are occurring in town. But we do need to support our law enforcement officers all across the board. They've worked really hard, they've tried really hard, and then we need to have the support in the district attorney's office. Right now we have these 13 murderers that are sitting in the jail in Washington County, and we've got a backlog of cases that are not even being handled. And so we really need to work on getting our own district attorney or our own dedicated district attorney here in Washington County who can then process some of these cases and get these people off the street, get them out of our communities so that we can do the harm reduction, we can get them the services that are necessary and actually be able to make a dent and do something with that and really work hard at it. So,
thank you. I agree with everything that's been said so far. As far as what I will do, it's a multifaceted thing, or what I would recommend. The first, I can tell you what I won't do, is I won't sign on to a bill to put more drugs on the street, to legalize any type of drugs. That'll never happen. I'll never vote for that under no circumstances. So that's what I won't do. What I will do is I will try to gather a group of people. The young people today, I think, that are getting involved in drugs don't have any mentors. Where are all the mentors? Where are all the retired fathers, the retired grandfathers? Why aren't they stepping up and coming alongside these kids when these kids don't have any support at home? What else? You take two kids that are both having problems, that problem quadruples when you put them together. So we need to attack this by maybe in a triple prong effect. First, find mentors. Second, get these kids help. And third, when they get out of school, they've got to have some place to go. Let's find some communities where we can have houses, maybe just a place where they can go play video games and have somebody come alongside them and then help them find a job after school. That's part of the problem, is the kids aren't working anymore. And we as parents, that's part of our fault because we've allowed it. And I had to work for everything that I got growing up. And I'm proud to say, I don't mean this boastfully, but our business that we just sold, we had over 100 employees, and we were in 4 counties with 118 beds in our assisted living business. And we built that over a 22-year period. But now I'm free, and I will be glad to represent you and anyone else that wants to come alongside me to attack this drug problem.
Substance abuse has been an issue in this county since when I first discovered it in 2000. And it continues to be a problem with that. There are a number of ways we need to approach it. First of all, prevention. Prevention, let's not get started in the first place. And there are many ways to look at that. And there have been in the schools some way of looking at that. It was training teachers how to recognize traumatized children. We brought treatment, NADA did, to the area, to Washington County, the first treatment that existed in Washington County. And what I found when I did the first 200 physicals was that close to between 60 and 70% of those people who were having trouble with substance abuse had significant childhood trauma. We have got to help our parents. We can't do that by ignoring, what's happening around us. It takes a community to raise a child. And that's what the schools are trying to work with at this point. That's prevention. Then what we've got to do is to make sure when addiction does happen, and we don't have control over that. And addiction is not just about opioids, quite honestly. We have addiction to alcohol. We have addiction to cocaine, even some of the ADHD drugs. This is a much wider problem. We're not going to be able to arrest our way out of this. I want to catch the traffickers. However, I did introduce a bill last year to not make substances legal, but decrease the charge for simple possession from a felony possession. Because I've seen people who have been 5 years out, had gone back to education and tried to find a job because of their felony conviction, they would not be hired. I want people in recovery to come back to our community, be able to work, be our taxpayers and part of the community. But we can't do that if we punish them for being substance abusers, even when they're finally in recovery. So that's another thing that we need to work with. Mental health. We talk about substance abuse treatment. We need significant improvement in mental health treatment. These people who were traumatized need more than just getting off their drug. They need help to sort and work their way through the trauma so that they can live the lives they hope to live. We can't take hope away. Isolation and hope, and the lack of hope, keep people in addiction. So we need to work on many different levels to do that. And I've had, I'll wrap. I've had law enforcement say a lot of these people don't belong in our jails, they belong in treatment. Somehow or other, I think we can all work together to do this. And I would love to be able to continue that work. Thank you.
The Democrats in Augusta, and not the Democrats back home, but the Democrats that have been sent to Augusta, have led a tough on cops, easy on crime agenda. And I can give you some examples of that. LD 1703, an act to amend the bail code. This allows people to get bailed out even if they can't afford to get bailed out, putting criminals back on the street even when no one will bail them out. LD 1679, an act to amend certain provisions of Maine's drug laws. This is the bill that was previously mentioned. It allowed an increase from 2 grams of fentanyl to 4 grams of fentanyl. And I'm all for decriminalizing addiction. I have had a lot of experience with addiction. But fentanyl is a deadly poison. It is not a recreational drug. To increase fentanyl, the limits from 2 grams to 4 grams is an absolute travesty. And then they attempted to ban qualified immunity, which would have decimated our law enforcement. And the only thing that stopped passage of that bill through the legislature was a call from the top down to not put that on the governor's which led to barely a handful of Democrats joining all of us Republicans to stop it in the House. You can't go down there with an agenda like that and expect the crime problem to get fixed in the rest of the state. That's why I urge everyone, no matter what you've done in the past, to vote for Republicans this election so we can get a handle on this stuff.
Sitting in the middle is a double-edged sword. Everybody's already given all the good ideas, and I feel bad for the people further down.
They get to start first next time.
So I agree with so much of what's already been said. I think what I can add to that is so much of the struggle that we try to fix with mental and behavioral health services and addressing the traumas that that people in general, not just children, but also very importantly children, are trying to cope with that might take them into addiction. There's a lot of insecurity, especially as the economy is getting more and more tight, I would say. It's getting harder for people to put food on the tables, harder to fill up your tanks, harder to pay that electric bill. And that insecurity is driving some of that desperation and making it and compounding the problem of access of good care. So I would like to see, I want to see more done to help ease the burden on the costs, curtail the costs where it's able, see investment in housing development, because to me, you are in a pretty bad place if you don't know where you're going to be able to put your head down at night, and that can lead to a lot of substance use when you don't know how you're going to pay for electricity, how you're going to pay for food. So those are the sorts of immediate short-term things I think we can work on, in addition to supporting our law enforcement, trying to increase access to behavioral and mental health services, and certainly continue to fight on all fronts this challenge. And it's not just Washington County, and it's not just Eastern Hancock County, it's a statewide problem, and every area can benefit from common sense improvements and supports for this situation. So, thank you.
The rich and the powerful on both sides of the aisle, like us fighting amongst ourselves. And I say that in response to Mr. Foggingham's comment about vote Republicans. I wouldn't vote Republicans or Democrats. I would vote rational people who will find the realities in the gray areas of life. And this may be naive, but I really believe that economic development of any kind brings jobs that bring hope. And when you have hope, you have strength. And that personal strength allows us to have so many social ills diminished. But without good jobs, no amount of programs or jails or law enforcement changes will really clearly address problems like the drug problems. Having said that, I feel very strongly that we need therapeutic practices to be in place for users. We need strong drug laws that put dealers behind bars. And sometimes those things need to be merged. My understanding of the nature of the drug problem is frankly somewhat limited. It's not something that's been a focus of my life recently. Many years ago it was when I was at the Job Corps Center in Bangor, but times have changed. But I think for a lot of recovering addicts, some form of residential placement is just really crucial. It's just so hard to shake some of the modern drug addictions without being removed from the settings that created the hopelessness that got you there in the first place.
I would encourage you not to vote Republican in this race on the district attorney ballot. We found in the last 8 years, while this problem has increased, the Republican has been in office. And that's not because of a Republican, it's because the individual has taken somewhat of a offhands approach to prosecution. There's way too many sweetheart plea deals being made in the current district attorney's office. I don't think that a drug trafficker belongs in drug court. Many of these folks coming in from New York are the Bloods and the Crips. They're organized crime. They're coming up here because I see it because I sign a lot of the search warrants. It's opportunity, and they're preying on our young folks. I mean, how many deaths have you seen over the last 10 years up here? Hancock County's seen a lot. We don't need to be making deals with the drug traffickers. If you talk to some of the corrections individuals who talk to the inmates, they see a year in prison as just the cost of doing business. They need to see 8 to 10 years in jail for trafficking. They can't be worked with. They're profiting off of deaths. I agree with many of the prior comments with regard to possession and addicts. The justice system isn't set up appropriately to deal with that issue. We have drug court. I think that's a good opportunity for first-time offenders to try and get their feet under them. If people who get caught up in the addictions and get caught for possession, like on first, second offense, sure, it's a medical problem. I don't think we need to make them all criminals. If they're willing to stand up and take responsibility and take action to get over their addiction, I'd be willing to work with them in terms of what we do in the criminal world. Traffickers, no. Thank you.
It really is hard to follow everyone because everyone has some really good points, and I want to put them all together, and that's my opinion as well. You really did kind of take the words right out of my mouth, Bob, because as I was listening to everyone, I was going to say we need to crack down on people bringing these poisons into our state. When you turn on the news and you see the news about who's been caught with what drugs, what's the percentage of them that are coming from New York? It's a lot. I think we definitely need to crack down and give them longer sentences and let them know that it's not okay to bring these drugs into our state and poison our people. There are so many different facets to this question. I personally know so many people in recovery that have done very well with the drug court, and they are great members of our community now, doing wonderful things and helping other people. With that, I think we really do need to focus on our recovery and help our citizens. Another thing that no one has mentioned is overprescribing. Not all of these people are young people or getting it off the street. They're prescribed it legally, and they can't get off it. It makes them feel good. I am very much a supporter of CBD and medical marijuana. I know lots of people that have done very well, and makes them feel so much better, and it's a natural way to alleviate pain. These heavy drugs that people are into, especially the fentanyl, that terrifies me, because from what I understand, a very, very teeny tiny amount can kill you. So we really need to focus on the harder drugs that are being brought here and harsher sentences for those people out of state that think that they can bring it here and poison us.
First of all, I support our local police department. I believe they're way understaffed to start with, and they're trying to keep us all safe. But we need stiffer sentencing for those who deal in drugs and commit violent crimes, and a district attorney that will not plead bargaining on everything. We should not loosen the drug laws, because drugs hurt everyone from the kids right down to the grandparents. I support keeping our prison and our jails open. We do not have less crime, we have less people going to jail. we need to get into some programs like we have the Arise Addiction Recovery, and I think they can be a big help with us with these kids. And I've met some of these students that attend the Arise, and I really think that we need to get them involved. And another thing is, quite a few years ago at the school that I worked for, we used to have a DARE program. That DARE program did a tremendous job for those young students. You need to get at these young kids with these programs to teach them that, because you don't know with these people coming in from out of state bringing these drugs in, and with these little kids, they just don't know. But quite a few years ago, Barry, you wasn't the sheriff then, but we had a real good program. And I realize you got to have staff for that, but I think most people would support that. But that's a big thing. You got to start with these smaller kids to educate them, and I think it will follow through with them. But if you try to start at the higher level, you need, it may work, but I think you got to start on the foundation first. I do not support setting up places for people to go and get high and discriminating drug use, but I would support a place where they can go and get help. I would support that if I'm elected as a legislator. Thank you.
I have some ideas that haven't really been mentioned yet. When we was at a meet and greet in Cherryfield, you mentioned how many square miles that a deputy sheriff has to cover in a shift. Can you refresh my memory on that?
1,000 miles. One person would be responsible for 1,000. I have 3 people on at a time, so we have 3,000 miles.
Yeah.
Square miles.
Yeah. That is impossible for a sheriff to cover. I think we need to increase the numbers of our deputies. We need to make it easier for law enforcement from other states to come into this state and bring their qualifications with them. You know, I think also we need to make it possible for people who come out of the military and the military police, find a way to bring them on and train them properly, and maybe have some satellite training facilities so that we can train them people, and also so that we can have a continuing education type of thing for our sheriffs that are here now. I also think that we need to separate our criminals from our drug addicts and from our dealers. You know, our law enforcement are trained to deal with criminals. Someone who has a drug problem is breaking the law, but really, you know, that if they're a criminal, it's because they've got an addiction they're trying to feed. So if we treat their addiction, then we can cure the criminal part. So I think, you know, we need to get the people with mental health problems out of the jails into in a facility that can help them with what they need. We need to get the people with drug problems out of the jails and get them focused on recovery.
Yeah, I think this is a many-pronged problem, and there's no fix that you can just come up with in a few sentences. I think it boils down to hope, which was mentioned earlier. If we can't find ways to make our citizens, our neighbors, have hope, either with jobs, just being able to make ends meet. When you feel as though you're spiraling down, I can't imagine what that would be like, but when you lose hope, you're losing an awful lot. Now, if it doesn't make you completely sick, that people are driving up the main turnpike and down our roads and getting a darn good price for what they're bringing up because, hey, they can do that up here because it's hard to get. And they're coming in here and they're finding some locals to help them out and move stuff around. It just makes you sick. I think Machias has done the town of Machias has done themselves an amazing service because a couple of years ago they hired a friend of mine, Keith Mercier, as the police chief. He had a patrol in Bangor. He worked at the University of Maine. He's worked with the Drug Enforcement Agency, and he's done a terrific job. Now, it's not all in the towns. I think the towns can be a starting point because a drug trafficker is not going to want to go to some township and drop off their stash. So I think the bigger towns, I think we have to have a very strong police force and scare the crap out of these dealers that come up here, because they're gonna have a rough time, and they're not gonna want to come back again. So I think if we can do that, along with giving people hope, I think we've made some progress.
I think prevention is easier to work with kids and to get law enforcement in the schools and the programs for DARE. I know we have Healthy Acadia here in Washington County that does a lot with the kids and coming in. It's important to keep funding those programs. We have a RISE on the recovery side, which again somebody had mentioned, but it's important to keep funding those programs. It's important to give people something to get out of bed for. So I think we need to come as community members and realize it's not just the people up here that can make the difference, but it's actually you guys can vote for a district attorney. You guys can help out your citizens and give us a voice that we can go down to and help represent you.
I've heard so many good things here tonight, and they're all good ideas. I believe we started out with a question about the murder rate, which has been linked probably to drugs. I mean, how many of these murders were committed that weren't drug related? You probably can give me that number right off the top of your head. Maybe 2. So everything else that we're talking about is drug related. Now, like Ann said, we got to get to the traffickers. It probably doesn't do much good to prosecute or to come down on the people who are using the drugs. Now, I learned something when I was talking to Bob Granger here a few weeks ago, that he mentioned it. These people are coming from out of state, and they're coming here possibly because we look soft. So what we have to do is to prosecute these people in a timely fashion. And one other thing that he said that stuck with me is that a reasonable sentence, which would certainly be a deterrent to me if I had to spend a year in jail, isn't anything to these people but the cost of doing business. They figure it in up front. So I think that we need to do, like everything else, it's multifaceted. But at this point, we need to look at prosecution. We need to obstruct this trafficking that's going on, and hopefully we can get a handle then and stop the murder rate.
Following up to that question, it's related but different. Everybody's talked about the need for more law enforcement or more resources and all of this, so let's talk about what everybody likes to talk about, taxes. There is an absolute belief, and I'll say as a county commissioner, that the state is abdicating its role in many ways in pushing more and more of these services onto the local municipalities and counties, which only draws from one source, property taxes. The state has a multitude of revenue sources, but yet it is taking these essential services, whether it be law enforcement, EMS, local fire, roads, you name it, it seems to be more and more every day pushed back onto the municipalities. Take that anywhere you'd like to go with it, ladies and gentlemen, but the question we ask is, what would you do to help bring tax relief to the local municipalities while not interrupting services?